So they got to the top, they didn't quite get there, and then it completely fell apart.
The year after that, when we were dealing with all that growth,
The
that
aftermath.
was really hard. That was like a year we almost ran out of money.
We had to have an emergency meeting.
I learned this from Dan Sullivan. The key difference in a wildly successful person versus an average person is they follow the 95-5 rule, which means... Welcome to another episode of the Law Firm Growth Acceleration Podcast. What's up, Andy?
What's up? I'm feeling great, and I actually came in here fired up. I got a story for you. All right. So we're both recovering from significant injuries, and I think this is actually going to help anybody that's dealing with an injury, right? So back in April of last year, so we're coming on almost 10 months now, I was doing some deadlifts, and I hurt my back. Because I was not using the right form and I was rushing, and lo and behold, here I am 10 months later, and my back is just not getting better. It's so frustrating. I've done physical therapy, I've done acupuncture, I've done, chiropractic, I've done massage, I've spent I'm probably like $20,000 in right now. And hours and hours and hours and hours of trying to fix this problem. So I started with this new acupuncturist last week, and I'm actually getting results. But it's funny because, and we do this with our clients a lot, before I actually ever met with him, somebody from his office called me and basically had what they call an expectations phone call. And I was like, this is the weirdest thing ever. Why is an acupuncturist giving me an expectations phone call? And have you ever done acupuncture before?
Mm-mm.
Okay, so acupuncture is really interesting, and I've done it before. And basically, a lot of times, what they do is they'll say I'm having an issue with my back, right? So they put needles a bunch of different places in your back. Sometimes they do weird things, like they'll put one in like your forehead and your hand and all this type of stuff. And it's always worked in the past for me, but it hasn't worked this time. But acupuncture has traditionally treated the area, right? The area that the problem is. So we got on the phone, and it wasn't the doctor. It was somebody that works for him, and she was like, I just want to let you know this is going to be something completely different than any acupuncture that you've done before. And we always have these calls now because we want to warn you before you come in. I was like, uh-oh, what does that mean? So I get in there, and the guy's like, okay, what's the problem? So I was like, I'm having a back issue, yada, yada, yada. And he's like, all right, so what we're going to do is we're not going to work on your back at all. We're going to work on your stomach, and we're going to work on your feet, and there's pressure points down there and things like that. And the way he explained it, he's like, because you have to understand your body is like a tree, and there's lots of branches. So maybe, your arms, your hands, your legs, everything is a metaphorical branch, but we could treat the branch, but unless you treat the trunk, you're always going to have problems with different branches. So he was naming off all these different problems. He's like, do you, because I was talking about, I work out very, 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 very hard. I'm very, very strict with my diet. And like my body fat percentage is fine, but it's not what it should be given the amount of effort that I put into it. And he nailed it. He's like, this happened. I was like, yeah, that's right. And then there was a couple other things. I don't even remember what they were. But basically, he started treating all these things that had nothing to do with my back. And this week was actually, I went to him last week for the first time. This week was actually the best my back has felt in 10 months, which is insane, right? And it got me thinking about our clients, because so often law firm owners are like, I need more leads. But when we dive in and we say, well, why do you actually want more leads? They're always like, well, it's because I want to be able to hire somebody and I want to be able to make more money so that I can finally take some time off, right? Or I want to make more profit or something like that. But how many times and we've worked with thousands of law firms by this point, how many times has more leads ever solved all of the, like just in a vacuum? All we did was more leads. That's it. And all their problems are solved. Their freedom problems. Have you ever seen that happen? Because I've been doing this for 13 years. I've never seen that happen before. And it's the idea that we need to treat the trunk of a law firm. And I think that's actually why we've been successful with the clients that we have. And why so many people have come into our program, and, they come into us thinking they want leads, and we're talking to them about, well, first you need to build your vision. You need to build up your vivid vision and things like that. And I'm curious to get your perspective on that, if you've ever actually looked at it that way. I've never thought about that until I was sitting on this guy's acupuncture table thinking, oh crap, this is like exactly what we do for our clients. It's super interesting.
Yeah, I think I relate it to, when I broke my hand. It was a fascinating PT process. Like when I broke my hand, I broke, this metacarpal, my pointer finger metacarpal, my ring finger metacarpal, and then I dislocated my pinky finger. So my hand was all screwed up.
How'd you do it? Tell
And
everybody the story real quick before you talk about that.
yeah, well, it was a road biking, accident, um, and I hit a guardrail, but basically a fence, and the reason that the physical therapy process was counterintuitive for me is because when I met with the doctor in Gainesville, Florida, he said basically if I wanted this to heal as fast as humanly possible, which is what I told him I wanted, that I needed to keep every other part of my body, um, other than this, obviously as it was healing, I needed to keep every other part of this arm mobile, right? So I didn't break my wrist, right? But what he said happens is oftentimes when people break their hand, they stop moving their wrist. Then they stop moving their elbow, they stop moving their shoulder, and the entire right side atrophies, right? So one of the first things I had to do was I had to put a weight. It was kind of like a band on my shoulder so that I could continue working out my shoulder. Then I had to figure out a way to continue working out my bicep muscle. So I had to put a weight around my wrist instead of my hand so that I could still work out my bicep muscle. And then I had to figure out a way to still work out my wrist without putting pressure on it. And because of that, as soon as the bones healed, my entire recovery was completely finished because I had kept every other part of the surrounding areas around the hand completely mobile, and I didn't lose any strength in those areas. So what usually takes people 12 weeks to fully recover from and get back to 100% took me maybe 6.5 or 7 weeks, right? So I was able to cut that time in half. But this applies to so many problems that our clients have, where if you treat the symptom, you never treat the root cause. And the biggest problem that people think they have is never the actual biggest problem that they have.
Yep.
So, if you have a hiring problem, this is something you were talking about before we started recording. If you have a hiring problem, you don't have a hiring problem. You probably have a brand problem. You probably don't have clarity around where your firm is going. You haven't documented that in a vivid vision document. And therefore, when you get people on the phone to potentially hire them, you have nothing sexy showing that potential applicant where your firm is going. You don't have a brand, so they're not like excited that they get the opportunity to work for your law firm, right? So do you really have a hiring problem? Does Tesla have a hiring problem? Does SpaceX have a hiring problem? Does Google have a hiring problem? No, because they build brands and they've created cultures with leaders who share where they're going constantly and put that out into the marketplace so people know where they're going, and they have strong brands, so it's easy to recruit people. Same thing happens with money, right? The most challenging thing I think about what you and I do, Andy, is this is on the coaching consulting side of our business, is the truth is this. If you take Extreme Ownership, which you and I love that book by Jocko, if you take extreme ownership for your outcomes in life, then you realize that every single outcome in business that you experience is a result of a lack of knowledge, a lack of action, a lack of mindset on the owner's behalf, right? So if I own a business that is not profiting anything, that's declining in revenue, that everyone wants to quit from, what is the actual root cause of every one of those problems, right? And you could even say that what's the root cause of a hiring problem? Well, it's the mindset of the owner, right? So, but imagine if we said, that was the first sentence that we said on every sales call was, hey, you want to know why you're experiencing these problems? It's you. Well, unfortunately, we can't do that. So we have to kind of, work our way to that. And typically 3 to 6 months into a average coaching or consulting arrangement with our company, the owners who are growth minded, they tend to self-identify like, whoa, there's things I wasn't thinking about and I wasn't growing within myself in, and that's why I'm experiencing these problems. So I believe the root cause of all root causes is the mindset of the owner.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because I did a webinar yesterday about hiring, and it was all it's a bonus if you're a VIP for our upcoming 2X Summit, you get access to these pre-webinars that I'm doing. Last week was on AI, which was freaking amazing. In terms of like what AI can do, it's just if you're a VIP, you got to get got to get access to the replays. We send all the replays out, and if you're not a VIP, upgrade to VIP. But yesterday we did a webinar on hiring, and the first half of it was not about. It wasn't about how to write the perfect job ad, right? It was basically how do you create a business that people want to work for? Because at the end of the day, I always say this, like, what is going to make somebody want to spend 40 hours, dedicate 40 hours of their life that they're never going to get back every single week to building your dream? And if you don't have an answer to that, then you're not going to get anybody, right? I mean, look at it this way, right? So this week, the Philadelphia Eagles won the Super Bowl, right? Which you're very excited about, and you've been very vocal about, right? But imagine if, well, first question is, do you think that every single person on the Philadelphia Eagles, not just the players, but the coaches, the trainers, the front office staff, hell, the guy that sweeps the floor of the locker room, every single person there knew, not like 2 weeks ago, not at the beginning of the season, but like they knew probably like 2 or 3 years ago, we're building a team that is making a run for the Super Bowl. And it's going to be maybe not this year, maybe not next year, but it's going to, by this period, we are building a team that's going to going to make a run for the Super Bowl. Now, how many players do you think are on that roster that had the option to sign for pretty much any team they wanted to? And they went to the Philadelphia Eagles. Maybe they had the option to sign for like, with the, I don't know, like, the Texans or the Dolphins or another team like that, or they could go to the Eagles. And they chose the Eagles because the Eagles are the team that they know is going to go to the Super Bowl, right? Or has the best chance of going to the Super Bowl. There's a lot of people that went to the Chiefs for the same reason and unfortunately didn't win, right? But
that's what Saquon did. Saquon got a higher offer from another team, and he chose the Eagles.
Exactly. And he chose that team. And that's actually a good lesson. Sometimes people will take less money to work for a company that they believe in the mission and they see where it's going, right? And it's funny because I brought this up on my coaching call with our clients the other day. I was like, the decisions that they make during the off season, the decisions they make during the draft, the decisions they make during training camp, the decisions they make, every single decision is this going to win us a Super Bowl, or is this going to hurt us our chances of winning a Super Bowl? Right now, can you imagine if a football team, the owner knew they were trying to win the Super Bowl, the coach thought they were trying to win the AFC Championship, the offensive line just thought they were just out there having fun, and like, can you imagine where would, it's like ludicrous to even think that that's a possibility, yet people run their businesses like this. And I say this, and I did this too. I'm not guilty of this. I mean, I've seen the light, but that's how it was for a long time. And it's like people, it's like such a crazy idea, but then we don't apply it to ourselves. It's funny,
Yeah, and I think we can learn so much about we're talking about root causes, right? Fixing the root cause versus the symptoms, right? And I actually think that's the key to achieving any goal. And I talked about this earlier this week during our team huddle on what are the lessons we can take away from a team winning the Super Bowl. And there's so many lessons, right? If the team is all united on a big picture vision and goal, which is a root cause of success, right? I mean, try and find one successful business that, to your point, they don't all have a shared vision of where they're going. I mean, it's like, it's luck at that point if you have success, and you never want to give your goals basically luck as the only variable of whether or not you reach them, right? Um, One thing that's really fascinating is Jalen Hurts, the quarterback of the Eagles, his statistics, right? I mean, he arguably has been the most criticized quarterback, partially because the Eagles are winning a lot, so they're in the spotlight a lot. But he has been criticized almost more than any other quarterback this year, and yet he goes on and wins the Super Bowl. And when you listen to the press conference interviews with Jalen, I sense this all year. The dude is obsessed with one thing, winning. One thing, right? And he will do whatever it takes to win, right? And I would venture to guess, based on all the other interviews I've listened to, Saquon, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, all the defensive players, every person I've ever heard a press conference or interview from on the Philadelphia Eagles team, they are 100% on the same page that they're just going to do whatever it takes to win, right? Even if that means their personal statistics don't look the best, right? And that was the result of this year. And Jalen encountered so much criticism as a result of them being, so sold on that one major objective. And I think that is, and then you think of like, what are all the root causes of success? Not everyone was on the same page with what success looked like, right? And I wonder how many law firms have everyone on their team on the same page with what success looks like, and individuals willing to make personal sacrifices in exchange for a shared goal, right? Then you think about what really caused the success of the team. Well, another root cause is they had a world-class roster of players, right? I mean, Nick Sirianni, again, another person who's been wildly criticized, right? And he goes and wins the Super Bowl. He's brash. He's outspoken at times. He can't contain himself. He can't, contain his impulses, blah, 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 all this criticism. But yet they have the best roster, arguably, in the whole NFL, right? So what caused them to win the Super Bowl? Well, they just had a better team. They just had better players in every position. And, and that goes to Howie Roseman, their GM, right? So you look at that as a factor. You look at, the fact they had a world-class team, the fact that they're all on the same page with a vision of what success looks like. And then you look at the consistency of their game plan, right? They were a run-first team, which had the ability to pass amazingly, but they just chose not to. But they only pulled that out. If you look at all the games they played throughout the season, the Eagles really only pulled out their pass offense when they were against a top 5 or 7 rush defense, right? So they were all on the same page with being a rush first offense, unless they encounter a top rush defense, right? So you look at these principles of A, we're all on the same page with where we're going. B, we have a world-class team of people. And C, we're all on the same page with how we're going to get there, our general game plan, quote unquote, right? And, you can't mistakenly win the Super Bowl. It's probably the most coveted thing in the United States, not in the world, but in the United States, it's probably the most coveted trophy that any individual could hold is the Super Bowl. And you can't win that stuff by mistake. And I think, for me as someone who loves watching sports, it's always fascinating to look at how sports teams succeed because it's so measurable. Like there's a scoreboard, there's a time limit, there's no way to hide from your KPIs in sports, right? Your KPIs are public to everyone at all times, right? You're on camera with every move that you make. I think another principle, and I want to hear your thoughts on like the common denominators of success in business that maybe we can learn from sports, is like the 95-5 rule. When you look at world-class performers, I learned this from Dan Sullivan when I was in Strategic Coach. He always said, if you look at world-class performers, you'll realize they follow the 95-5 rule, which means 95% of their time is spent preparing, 5% of their time is spent performing, right? And if you look at sports, if you look at world-class musicians, if you look at, anybody who performs in any way, shape, or form, 95% of their time is spent preparing, 5% is performing. If the only way that the Eagles prepared was by performing, they wouldn't have won the Super Bowl. Meaning, if they only prepared by playing actual games, they wouldn't have been the best team, right? They had to prepare 95 to 5, versus how much they performed. And what I think is sad and true is if you look at the business world, it's the opposite. 95% of our time, most people, is spent performing, and 5% of our time is spent preparing, learning, training, rehearsing, doing role play, and really enhancing your skills and abilities. And I just think there's so much we can learn from success in sports that we can apply to the root causes of success in a law firm or a business.
There's a couple things. So one stat that I heard about Steph Curry, for example, and like I've been getting into basketball because my son is into basketball, and he's obsessed with Steph Curry. Steph Curry has made less than 4,000 3-pointers in his entire career. Right? He's played, I think, over 1,000 games. He's made less than 4,000 3-pointers, and he's the all-time greatest 3-point shooter of all time. Right? He takes 500 shots every single day. He shoots 500 3-pointers every single day. And he's done this for, he didn't just start doing this. He's done this like since high school, right? So I don't know how many millions of shots that is, right? For him to take less than so basically in 8 days, he takes more 3-pointers than he made in his entire NBA career, like a 15-year NBA career, right? And that brings me to a concept that one of our mentors, Myron Golden, always talks about, how, professionals practice more than they play and amateurs play more than they practice. And it's the same thing in business, And there's something else that I want to point out also about the Eagles. This has somehow turned into a sports episode, but I think a lot of times business owners and need to embrace the fact that failure is part of being successful. And you're not going to be successful without your failures. There's no business owner out there, unless one or two, unless like the one guy who got super lucky his entire career, who has never failed at anything, right? And honestly, our failures are they're the most painful, but they're also the most important because they teach us what we did wrong so that we can do it right the next time, right? The biggest lessons I've learned in life have come from when I failed, not from when I've succeeded. But think about the Eagles. They just won the Super Bowl this week, right? What happened last year? And actually, I remember the turning point because you and I were sitting there watching a game where the Eagles were doing great all season, and then at the end of the year, it just kind of fell apart, right? And I remember the very game.
They were something close to, I think it was like 9-1.
Yeah,
like
and then
10-1 or something.
Yeah, and then they lost. I think it was to the Cowboys. We were in Miami together watching the game, and they lost the game. And then from there, it was just downhill from there, right? But the year before, they were in the Super Bowl and they lost the Super Bowl, right? So they were almost they got to the top. They didn't quite get there, and then so you think, okay, we're going to do it again this year. We're going to do it, right? And then it completely fell apart. And then so then they had to rebuild. They had to regroup and figure out, okay, what did we do wrong? But it's a great example. Like I think that, not to toot my own horn here, but I think that, or our own horn, I think that we're one of the best marketing companies in terms of not just marketing our clients, but also marketing ourselves in the legal industry. This week, though, we had to have an emergency meeting because some of our ads for an event that we have coming up are not performing the way that we need them to. So what did we do? We actually got together, and instead of panicking, instead of saying, oh, advertising doesn't work, we're finished, we just basically regrouped. We went back to the basics. And we said, okay, what are the fundamentals here that we're missing, right? What are the fundamentals that we can get right? And we regrouped. We took 2 or 3 days, got it back, and now we're getting back on track, right? So it's like a lot of times business owners, they expect it to just be this nice upward curve or upward trajectory for everything, and it's not. There's that cliche, what I think success looks like, and it's a straight line, and then what it really looks like, and it's just a big, like a toddler scribbled all over the page, And I think people don't realize that.
Of how your failures change you. I was watching, the NFL just released a mic'd up version of the Super Bowl, and it's amazing. We actually watched it in the office after the workday yesterday on our big screen, and at the point of the game, I think it was the Devontae Smith touchdown, where the Eagles went up like 34-0, right?
Mm.
But right before that play, Nick Sirianni says to Kellen Moore, the former offensive coordinator, he says, "Yeah, just run the play. If we get it, if we score, it's done, right? Just run the play." So he's basically saying, run a touchdown pass play, and because if we score it, the game's over. And Jalen, it then goes to a clip of Jalen live on the sideline, recorded, mic'd up, and the Devontae Smith had caught the touchdown pass. Jalen goes back to the sideline, and one of his teammates goes up to him and says, "Is Jalen Hurts going to smile yet? Is he going to smile yet?" And Jalen looks at him and no smile on his face at all, and looks at him and says, "Nah, that last game changed me. That last game changed me. I'm not smiling until the clock's at 0, right?" And they're up 34-0, and that failure of him losing that last Super Bowl he was in changed his identity so much that he wouldn't even smile when they were up 34-0 approaching the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
So that is why I think, I say this like, not necessarily tongue in cheek. I say this with like empathy for a lot of business owners of why many business owners should never have gone into business is most people's relationship to failure, to your point, which you just explained, like some of our ads weren't working and how do you perceive that? Jalen and the team perceive that as we must succeed. This is going to change who I am permanently. This is going to change my behaviors. This is going to change the way I prepare. This is a great thing, right? And most people in business, they try an ad once, they hire, X number of people, and they say hiring doesn't work and no one can do it as good as me, and marketing doesn't work and blah 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 blah. And they use their failures as reasons to go backwards. And there's this video by Brendan Burchard I watched a long time ago, before I even knew what personal development was. This is when I was like privately watching self-improvement videos when I was in college on my phone and not telling anyone because I thought it meant I had a problem, before I like started opening up about my love for personal development and realizing that it's an amazing thing that I love. I was more like insecure about it. And I was watching this video and he was talking about the success mindset, and what he said was the number one thing, and he's coached, billionaires and very successful people. The number one thing that he's found is that the key difference in a wildly successful person versus an average person is what they do when they fail, right? So what he said was, if something doesn't work, an unsuccessful person will stop. If they try to persuade someone and they can't persuade someone, they stop. If they try to reach a certain financial goal and it's harder than expected, they stop, right? And the successful people look at that as raw data to then get better. And really, if you break it down to like the fundamental self-improvement mechanism and formula, it's when negative facts, which you could say facts aren't negative, when facts that aren't so good, right, present themselves, successful people use that as fuel, and unsuccessful people use that as their reason to stop.
All right, so I think we should play a fun game. I'm going to give you, and actually maybe we can give each other these. I'll give you a law firm symptom that we hear constantly. So how many lawyers have you talked to at this point? Thousands. I've talked to that as well, right? But we really hear the same 5 problems, right? So why don't we talk about the symptom, and then what's the real problem that's actually happening here? So I'll let you go first. The first one I'm going to give you is I can't get enough leads. What's the real problem?
The root causes is one of the root causes is I'm not spending enough, and the reason you're not spending enough is because you have a money problem, right? That's one reason. Second reason, root cause, I don't have enough leads, could be an indication that you're actually not signing up enough cases, and you do have enough leads, but you just don't know it, and therefore you have an intake problem. But because you're not signing up enough cases from the leads you're getting, you think it's a leads problem, but it's really an intake problem. And then why do you have an intake problem? Well, maybe you don't have a full-time person dedicated to intake. Why don't you have that? Well, your firm's too small. And what's that mean? You don't have enough money, you know? And that means that you need to go, generate more money to be able to hire a intake person, to be able to solve your intake problem, to be able to not have the excuse you don't have enough leads. What would you say to that? If I'm going root cause, I'm not going problem solving.
No. I'm saying root cause. Yeah, no, I agree. Like, so let's use the trunk and the branch analogy, right? So I don't have enough leads is the branch, right? What's the trunk, right? Well, I think that the trunk, first of all, is that you probably don't exactly know where you're going. Because the question I always ask is, well, how many leads do you need, right? And like how much is enough, So what's funny is that, you've heard the term FU money, right? So everybody has this dream of being rich, but very few people actually know what their FU number is. Because if you have a certain amount of money and you can generate enough interest to cover your living expenses, then theoretically you have FU money, right? Because if you don't have to work to pay your bills anymore, then and it's different for everybody, right? But nobody's ever calculated that number. Like, what is your monthly expense? And then, okay, let's say my monthly expenses are $5,000 a month. That's low, but right, how much would I need to make how much money would I have to have in the bank to generate $5,000 a month in interest, right? And if I'm doing that, then theoretically I don't have to work anymore. But nobody's ever calculated those numbers, right? So I think the first problem is that nobody's calculated the numbers. Nobody's calculated, well, how many leads do I actually need? But the only way you can know how many leads you need is to know, what is your cost to acquire a customer? What is your lifetime customer value, right? Or lawyers say client, but it's the same thing. What's your average case value? How much does it cost to get a case, right? So then we can look at those two things and we say, okay, well, if I want to make $1 million a year, just for simple math, and my case value is $5,000 per case, well, then I need 200 cases. Okay, so now we're getting somewhere, right? And then what's my closing percentage? Well, if my closing percentage is 25%, then I need 800 leads. But what if but what if I'm getting 400 leads? Okay, well, you can do two things. You can double your leads, or you can double your closing percentage, right? Because if you can close twice as many, or the third thing is you can make more money per case. So the answer is not, it's like you said, it's not always I need more leads, and the answer is not always black and white. But I think what it really comes down to, I think the trunk, if you will, is most lawyers don't know where they're going. Because I don't need more leads. It's, I have a goal. It should be, I have a goal, and to accomplish this goal, I need to make this much revenue. How do I generate this much revenue? And there's many ways to generate revenue, right? So what if you had a referral program, and you had a referral program that got your clients to refer people to them? Well, do you need more leads at that point? Not necessarily. You just go back to the leads that you already got and get them to refer more people to you. You know what I mean? So it's a more complicated question that all comes back to, in my opinion, not knowing where you're actually going. Because then you don't know. It's like filling your car with gasoline, but you don't know how far you need to drive. Right? It's like that's how I look at it.
Think about how you just actually hit it on the head. I didn't even think of that as a root cause. Cuz I was thinking, I don't have the money is the root cause, or this or that, intake, but if you really think about it, it's such a good point. Is maybe the root cause of everything is lack of clarity on what you want and what you want to achieve and what goals you want to reach, right? Because think about part of the reason that we've experienced I wouldn't say the year after we merged, I would say that was a really difficult year. Actually, no. The year we merged was an amazing year. We tripled our company's revenues. It's where we really made a splash in the industry at a whole different level.
Mm-hmm.
The year after that, when we were dealing with all that growth,
The
that
aftermath.
was really hard. That was like a year we almost ran out of money, even though we were, growing and all these external things were good. And then think about what we did during the end period of that hard year of ours. Think about what we did. What was the big thing that changed? We created a thorough driver model, right? We created a thorough, and we already had an annual plan prior to this. But what were our annual plans when we first merged? They were just top line revenue focused, right?
They also weren't really based on reality either. It was basically, we just decided this is where we're going to go, which is good in the beginning. But then when everything's foggy, that's good. You just need there's a light over there. I'm going to go there. But then as the fog starts clearing, then it starts getting a little, then like, oh, maybe we should actually tune our compass a little more.
So we had goals, but the goals were primarily like top line focused, right? In terms of the number of law firms we wanted to impact and work with and provide value to. That was clear. And we were reaching those goals, but we never actually focused on the bottom end of the profit and loss statement, the budgeting, and like you said, forecasting. I didn't even know what forecasting was, right? I thought you just set goals from, with blindfolds on, I want to do blah, and then you just like command that into existence and figure it out, right? But think about why this last year, I think you and I can both agree, this last year was the easiest year you and I have had in business, and yet arguably our company became the most valuable it's ever been. So not only was it the easiest year, but we created more enterprise value with our company than ever before, exponentially higher than anything we've ever achieved previously, A. B, our clients were happier than before. C, we signed up more clients than ever before. So I don't think that it's a mistake or luck that once we created a thorough budget for ourselves and forecast based on actual data, not just, pulling it from a hat and saying we're going to double our revenues or whatever. The fact that we practiced disciplined goal setting and we adhered to those goals closely like a game plan, I think you may have hit something that I don't think otherwise I was thinking as a root cause. I think that if everyone, this is why it's very difficult, right? We've talked about this in our coaching program, and I love being transparent about this stuff. We struggle in terms of managing the methodology through which we coach our clients, right? We have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of law firms in our coaching program. And oftentimes the big debate that I have with Vic and Peter is how much do we want to focus on immediate ROI activities versus how much do we want to focus on the long-term things that our clients need to build in order to be successful for the future? Example, like you said, when someone signs up with us for coaching, do we want them to build their vivid vision first, roll out quarterly boulders, roll out key performance indicators, create employee scorecards for every member of their team so they know their KPIs? Do we want to do that? Well, that's the most valuable stuff for the long term. But is it the most urgent? No. If you have hundreds of thousands of dollars, in outstanding accounts receivable right now, if your team is quitting crazy, you're going to have some immediate hiring goals, so you don't go bankrupt. You're going to have to immediately collect some of that revenue so that you can profit something, right? So the hardest thing I find in guiding and advising law firms is how do you balance immediate ROI focus, like things that can get the law firm an immediate ROI versus things that can create long-term value for the law firm, vivid vision, boulders, KPIs. And that's where I'd love to hear your input there, because I feel the fact that we focused so much on those long-term initiatives for ourselves, we're now able to reap the rewards of that. But we had to say no to solving so many immediate issues in order to really learn that complex budgeting process and forecasting process that we learned.
So I think that there's a couple of things. I think that the reason that this last year was the easiest year that we've had is because we removed one core element from our business. Do you know what that is?
Mm-mm.
Emotion. We removed all. We do not make, like, how many impulsive, dude, you called me one day. You're like, this is in 2023. You called me. Hey, he's like, hey, we're doing an event, or we already knew we were having the event. Hey, I hired Alex Rodriguez and I got him for 160. Well, I'm not, how much, maybe we should bleep out the amount that we paid him, but I got him for,
No,
all right, I
that
got
was
him for
it. 160.
$160,000. No conversation, no thought about it, no thinking about, hey, can we afford this? Like none of that stuff. And that wasn't the only person we hired for that event, right? And now
Gary Vaynerchuk,
Jillian Michaels, who was the attorney, Gloria Allred, dude, like, so it was all very emotional. It was like, hey, you know what? We're behind on sales. Let's do an event. And last year, and this last year, there's no emotion. It's based on how much, like what do the numbers say? Okay, so this is what we have to do. Okay, so it's, there's no emotion. There's no emotion to our business whatsoever, which sounds like a bad thing. And it doesn't mean we don't care about the business. What it means is that we don't make drastic knee-jerk decisions now. And
well, let me clarify that too, because you're thinking, you could misinterpret that. Like, it's like, do we have no emotion towards our client's success? Absolutely not. No, we have no emotion towards things that detract from our client success. Example, what's the thing that we study very intently when it comes to client success? Well, the results that they get from our services, right? And as a result of that, how long they stay with us as a company, our retention rate, basically. These are two God metrics for us as a company, right? So when you are once you know what metrics are the best for client success and the metrics that are best for sales and revenue, that I want to be clear that being emotionless doesn't mean that we become insensitive.
Maybe impulsive is the word. Maybe we removed impulsiveness. That's probably what it is.
I think the word is objective, right? If we roll out something like when we rolled out Launchpad, right? We thought Launchpad was risky as a solution, but also highly valuable as a solution. Launchpad was a solution we had in the past, when we used to have package names and stuff, where we would do coaching for someone and local services ads management. And Andy was the one who really came up with this idea, where he was like, what's the most immediate ROI thing we can do for clients? Now, did Andy just use his gut for that? No. We pulled data from our agency team, hundreds of clients, and we said, what is the highest ROI advertising platform across all of our clients on average? And it was clear that it was local services ads. So Andy said, how can we just give clients coaching and that, right? Now, I was scared about this because I had emotion tied up in it, which is really subjectivity. And I was thinking, I don't really like that, because I like when we get to provide full service marketing to clients, because then we're able to do their SEO, get them ranking in Google Maps and get them organic leads, right? And if the local services ads don't work for 1 month, then clients are going to be pissed off, because ads are never perfectly predictable, right? So I was thinking, no, we have to go towards full service marketing. But the data showed us that local services ads were the best bet. So we rolled out this product based on the data, and it ended up being like one of our most successful product combinations, local services ads and coaching, because we used data in that decision. And then we looked at it months and months and months later, years later really, and we looked at like what was the client results that were gained from this, and therefore how many clients stuck with this program. And it was like 90% client retention. So that is a great example of the objectivity. I'm trying to not say emotionless, but I know what you mean. That's an example of using objective data to make client-focused, client-centric decisions.
Yeah. It's funny. It's also like we're making decisions that are based on the big picture rather than the short term, I think. And like
Mm.
I like it. So I've been, over the last couple of years, I've learned a lot about stock trading. Not a ton, but just enough to be dangerous, basically. And one of the big things that they talk about is mitigating risk, right? So you never want to allocate more than a certain percentage of your portfolio to any given one, stock or whatever when you're buying, especially if you're buying growth stocks and things like that. And
I
it's kind
got
of the
this
same thing.
breakthrough. I got this breakthrough company. It's
Yeah,
called
yeah, exactly.
Aerotine International.
But what's funny
This
is,
is a state of the art.
oh yeah, exactly. So it's that's such a good scene from Wolf of Wall Street. But
Yeah.
um, so it's similar to gambling. So when I was in college, I used to play online poker, right? And like what would happen is if you're the really good players that actually made money, they were really really tight. They would $15 a game, right? But what would happen is you end up going on, we called it on tilt, where you lose 3 games in a row and you break your system. You're like, all right, now screw it. I'm doing $100. I'm winning all that money back, and you know what I mean. And you never win, right? It always so playing with emotion. But all right, let's do one more. Let's do another one, another symptom, right? How about let's go with the common one. I can't hire anybody. No, there's no good employees out there right now. Nobody's looking for employees, right? What's the that's the branch. What's the trunk?
Why don't you answer that one first, since I did the last one?
Well, I think that the trunk is that you have not created an environment that is going to, first of all, attract high level employees. And second, you have not created a reason for high level employees to work for you. Right. And I think that there's a lot of insight in that, when you think about people don't leave companies, they leave managers, usually is what it comes down to. But I think about, to continue the football analogy, let's think about Tom Brady when he left the Patriots a couple years ago. He literally could have gone to probably 31 teams, excluding the Patriots, because he just left them, and probably could have walked in and said, I'm your quarterback, right? Maybe one or two exceptions. But what did he do? He went to the Dolphins and he interviewed with them. And then he went to the Broncos and he interviewed with them. And he went with the Tampa Bay Bucks and he interviewed with them. And I'm sure there's other teams that he talked to as well. And I always ask people, I'm like, do you think that they were interviewing him or he was interviewing them? Like, should I come to Miami and win you guys a Super Bowl, or should I come to Denver and win you guys a Super Bowl? Oh, okay, you know what? I'm just going to go to Tampa and I'm going to win you guys a Super Bowl. And what did he do? He won the Super Bowl, right? So I think that a lot of it comes down to, you need to be in a position where you've created something that's going to attract people, that's going to make people want to work with you, because A-level employees can work wherever they want. We had an employee a couple years ago, absolute rock star employee. We had to let him go, unfortunately, because of core value reasons. He didn't go polish his he had a job in 2 hours, and I think you know who I'm talking about. He had a job in 2 hours, because A players get to choose where they work. So with that in mind, I think it's a big part of it is that because they get to choose where they work, you have got to make yourself choosable, right? For lack of better terms. And once again, what makes a company choosable? What makes somebody, like, what are the things that A players want? Well, they want compensation, obviously. I mean, like the average salary in the NBA is $11 million. Steph Curry makes $60 million. LeBron makes $55 million. Joel Embiid makes $55 million. You know what I mean? But that's also disproportionate for the business world. What's really cool is that in the real world, you can pay somebody 25% more and get 5 times the productivity, right? It's not paying like I doubt that Steph Curry's great, but he's not 5 times as productive. Well, maybe Steph Curry is, but I think he's disproportionately paid for compared to the average. That's not how the real world is, right? But what else do they want? They want culture. They don't want to work with. They don't want to come to a company with toxic culture. They don't want to come to a company that's full of drama and tolerates underperformers. They want to win, right? They want autonomy. They want career pathing. What else do they want? I know there's other stuff. Compensation, autonomy, career pathing, culture.
Yeah, well, think about how simple this one is. Like, I have another root cause that's way simpler too. Is like pay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, why aren't you attracting great people? Well, because you're you're pinching pennies and you're not, you're not paying double what your competitors pay. I mean,
Yeah.
and you're not thinking big enough. I mean, this is something that we experienced when we were recruiting, right? Is just by changing the job title, you can change every single person that you attract for a role. Guarantee you, if you put in a job title like sales consultant, right? You are going to get thousands of applications if you're that vague and low in terms of how you position a role, right? But if you put in a job title that is executive vice president of finance and data, and the compensation for that role is $300,000, right? You're going to be lucky if you get one application a week for a job role like that, right? Because ain't no sales consultant going to apply to executive vice president of finance and data, right, at a $300,000 salary level, right? So it's not just the salary level that you're putting up, that you're recruiting within, but number two is like, if you're not thinking about the future of where your firm's going to be in 1, 2, 3, 4 years from now, then you're going to recruit people for your current needs, not your future needs. And the biggest thinkers, they're going to be recruiting bigger job titles for bigger compensation packages. And it stems back to, why can't you pay someone X, right? You have a money problem, right? And so the root cause of that is you're probably not clear on what your financial targets are, which, that applies to your point. Are you crystal clear on where you're going financially as a key component of that, right? And if you're not going to be able to afford great people. And then I think the other root cause, and I can't attract great people, is you're not poaching. It's your methodology, right? You have no methodology for convincing people to quit their jobs and join your law firm, right? So you're basically victim to whoever's unemployed. If no good people are unemployed in my local market this month, guess I'll just give up. Guess the job market's hard.
You know what? It just occurred to me. You know what? Maybe they're right. Maybe there aren't really a lot of good people out there looking for jobs. I think they are.
Yeah.
You know what? I've been saying this entire time. I've been telling them they're wrong. No, they're 100% right. Mm-hmm. So what they need to do is they need to go poach instead of wait for people to come to them. All right. I just had a mind. It literally just clicked for me that instead of telling them they're wrong, I actually think they're right. They have to change their methodology. So, all right. Well, what have we learned today? We got to, I think this is a good episode. I think that there's a lot of good stuff we learned. Let's recap real quick. What did we learn?
Acupuncture works.
Yeah. I think that's actually the moral of the story here is acupuncture. No, you know what it is that you've got to treat the root, and all the branches will fall in place. And I think that that's what we've seen with our business. And I think that the most successful law firms that we work with, they've all done that. They all have that in common, is that they've treated the root cause of their issues rather than just putting out fire after fire after fire after fire and just dealing with all the different symptoms.
Yeah, I think that's the only thing I'd add on that is the root of all roots is you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. If you have money problems, it's you.
Yep.
If you have hiring problems, it's you. If you have, profit problems or employee retention problems, it's you. So go learn something new, go be someone better, go test new things, and you'll deserve. I always say I don't say this. Charlie Munger said this, and I repeat it a lot. The world is not yet a crazy enough place to reward a whole bunch of undeserving people. That's a quote from Charlie Munger. In order to get what you want, you must deserve what you want. In order to deserve what you want, you must be the person who can get what you want. You must become that identity. So go get acupuncture.
All right. See you guys later.
If you found value in this podcast, here's one way I can help your firm right now. First, you can get our new book, Law Firm Growth Accelerator. It's everything we've learned over 10 plus years helping lawyers build thriving, profitable firms. The strategies that you'll get in this book work for any practice area and any revenue level. You can get the audiobook and ebook 100% free, or just cover the shipping and we'll send you the physical copy to you in addition to the audio and ebook. Go to smbteam.com/book to get your copy.